Hello, welcome to my little dojo at home. It's where I train. I thought I'd use the video this time myself. You seem to be using them quite well yourself, making your point quite well, with the aid of a few visual aids, so I thought I'd give it a go myself. Better than the old keyboard. So, the Gedan Barai, which we're going on about. Firstly, I like the way you were talking about the hips, the forward and back around. We'll come on to the line of the arm in a second if you don't mind. But I do actually, it made me think quite a lot about katas and one thing and another, just the way you describe the Gedan Barai, and the way we use Gedan Barai in kata is very much the way you described it yourself. And one thing I don't feel that enough people do in karate is listen to their kata, listen to the principles and the methods, the strategies and the tactics contained within them. So, you know, it's the way you described it got me thinking about katas in that way. When you take, for example, Togyoko Shodan Kion kata, you may call it. If you're beginning, you're facing to the front, so bow in, off to the side, and then at this point you're bringing your hips round, and then the arm is going to follow through its normal line, whether it's up here, down here, wherever you start from. The line itself, the effective part of the block is obviously from there to there. That's where the block is effective. Across here, and see the hips moving in this direction is what makes it. Same from here. You're coming round, hips are moving round, along and in the direction that the arm is moving as well. So that, in theory, yes, gives you much more power, and it's something I agree with, and it's something I've actually thought about quite a bit in basics before. Questions instructors, not quite really got the answers that I was looking for, didn't clarify things one way or another, just gave me more questions. I didn't put very many good arguments forward either, to be perfectly honest. Say for example, in basics, as we're going forward, whether it be from another Zenkutsu, moving into Zenkutsu, or just from Hagadachi, moving into Zenkutsu Dachi, we would be from here, hips forward, in Shomen, coming forward, we would remain forward until after the preparation point, and then snap off. So we'd snap off, and the hips come through. Now to me, excuse me, got me tea. So to me, as we come forward there, that would mean that the hips being forward are now moving in that direction, rather than pushing forward or pushing around with the line of the arm. Now if you are pushing forward with this hip rather than pulling that one back, that makes more sense, and which is the way I've been told more to do it that way. But to me that means the arm wants to come this way. So for me it means the arm wants to come this way rather than across that way. Hopefully that makes sense. Now that to me is how it feels. That feels like if I'm using my hips like that, that's what the arm wants to do. It wants to come forward and almost come forward and strike with a tetsu, rather than coming round and blocking. Now what you described before was almost forward there and then back around that way, which actually feels really good. I quite like that. So obviously I'm going to have to put that towards my instructor, my immediate instructor anyway, and see what he has to say. As long as he doesn't have any problems with that, then I will definitely be using those theories to teach moving forward. I can't see him having a major problem with it, as long as it doesn't change anything in kata, which, as I've already said, if they listened anyway, I don't think they would have a problem with that, because that is how we use our hips in kata. Anyway, it's just in kata we don't. I can't think of any. I don't know if there's any Shotokan kata for yourselves. We move forward with a Gedan Barai, whether it's in a normal Kion style structure, straight down the middle, or in any other way. Trying to think, the only times we use Gedan Barai in kata, we have one where you move backwards. Where are we? Yeah, from here. It's a Goju kata originally. From here, coming back and blocking. So to use your theory, go back and around. Yeah, fair enough. I mean, it doesn't particularly make sense with that one particular move for kata, purely to fit with the bunkai, with the moves that follow it up. But definitely from a Gedan point of view, I would agree. But yeah, we'll leave the hips for now, but that definitely makes sense. I agree with that. Thank you very much for that point. It was more the line of the arm that I was questioning. The hips, perfectly fine, spot on as I said. It's more like this extra bit of movement. When we prepare, the idea for ourselves is from hand back here in chamber position, it just comes up. There's no extra bend, there's no any straightening from there, boom. So it just comes from there up to here, into the tying point here. There's no extra movement, there's no up and round, there's no down and up from here, direct line to there. There's a slight rounded movement at the end, so it avoids the predicament, I suppose, that you put forward of up, stop, go, making it 2 stages. So it wouldn't be 1, 2, it's literally one fluid movement. Whether it's like you say, I mean, obviously different preparation point, that's the way we would normally do it from here, forward and out, like you say, in and then back out, which does make more sense. It was the extra bit of movement from here up to here, which I wasn't quite sure about. Now you said, excuse me, sorry, must have rushed me tea a bit too quick. You mentioned about the car example that I put forward, and basically said you understood it, helped you see what I was trying to say, didn't quite agree with it. I would argue back to what you said, however, that we don't, you say that there was a fast car and a slow car. Your car, yes, is faster, because you've got that extra bit of movement, that extra bit of momentum that you'll carry through from being up that bit higher and coming forward. But it still makes the journey of the block from here to there longer. So just being there to there, it comes from there and up to there and down before it comes to there. Yours doesn't stop, ours doesn't stop. So I think it's a bit of a moot point, what you were saying. I understand it. I agree that a lot of beginning students, presumably across every style, do become a bit robotic, if not immediately at some point in their training. I know I've went through it as a beginner. I know my students have gone through it. I know there's some students I've got now that are still in that stage and I'm working hard to try and get them out of it. So I do understand where you're coming from, but I don't think, if we're doing the move correctly, and that's what I'm basing all my opinions on, a move being done correctly, because yes, there's lots of people that do moves that we know aren't quite correct, so you wouldn't compare someone who's doing a move incorrectly to move of someone who's doing it correctly from another style. You know, you'd have two good karateka both doing the move correctly as their style would suggest, and then you would compare that, in my opinion anyway. I presume you think the same. So that was the extra bit here. There's no pause in what we do. It wouldn't be, you know, first go, bang. It's all one move. There's no up and across. It's literally just through. So it's just round, like you say with the hip, and block it round. So it's set, it's all one move. So it's up, into the preparation point, round it, that last little corner, so it's not a square, in and out, not like an arrow, not like a corner of a square, it's rounded like an oval, but just a very small one, and then round. So while you saying makes sense, I would argue that what you were saying is sort of, it's a beginner's argument. Not beginner's argument, it's an argument towards a beginner, as in why a beginner needs to become more fluid rather than this versus that way of doing it. I do believe that your way would definitely, and I mean I've done it, and I do think it would produce more of an internal feedback of power. I'm not quite sure how to describe it, sorry. It might look a bit faster. I'm sure it is a bit faster, but I'm sure it would also it does also feel as though it's that little bit more powerful. But I do think that it feels that way, while sometimes it isn't necessarily the case. If you were doing it against an attack, it doesn't always, just because it feels powerful doing it to the air, I wouldn't suggest that it is always more, that's always the case in application. As I'm sure you're aware of with a lot of sport karateka, when they're doing their katas, you know, they do look really sharp. They come through, bang, bang, relaxed, tense, fantastic. Everything looks awesome. But you know, if they were to do that technique on a punch bag or you know on a real opponent, it wouldn't have as much effect as it would appear it would have. So that is the other part of the argument I'm putting forward, that a block doesn't have to be very bang, particularly in application. So I've looked at the way it is in kata and agree with you completely on the side of the hip movements. The preparation points, still think a little bit over-exaggerated. I mean, obviously in application, I presume you'll think along the same lines as us. In application, it wouldn't be a one, one. You know, if someone goes to take for a kick to the groin, the obvious one for Gedan Barai, you're not going to go 1, 2, try and block it. You're standing there, you're going 1, 2. For a start, you're going to move. You know, if you hit a little tiny move, it would just be a cross and back. You know, if you're in kumite, bang, and back. You know, maybe even coming forward at the same time and coming off. Possibly even doing it with your backhand off to the side. You know, still, there's lots of things you can come off to the side. Off to the side. To me, blocks are more fluid, more about redirecting. You mentioned the Aikido. I do tend to use the more Goju principles from our style. Obviously, I mean, I presume you know we come from Goju and Shotokan combined. I do tend to use the Goju principles a lot more when it comes to defensive strategies and tactics, I suppose you would call them. A lot more fluid blocks, very much the opposite of boom. The idea of, I don't like a strong block. I think it puts you in a position of disadvantage sometimes until you're particularly good at it. I mean, I do like the idea of a strong block against certain opponents, but then on other opponents, I do believe it'd be easy to just redirect them and attack, particularly on an opponent that's bigger and stronger than you, which I'm sure you would agree is more likely to be the case in a self-defense situation. I mean, there's very few people who are going to be that tall and weigh 90 pounds that are going to be, you know, trying to knock my head off in a club. They're more likely to be up there and out there, at which point I would flee if I had the possibility. But that's another story. Right, what was I saying? Told you I'm not very good at this talking to camera stuff. Much better talking to people. Yeah, that's it, redirecting. So yeah, I would much prefer just a little boom, redirect the block rather than boom, powerful block. Like I say, I mean, from a kumite point of view, from a sport point of view, sometimes coming in, I'm really bang, knocking that arm, so you actually hurt the arm that's trying to punch you, trying to mentally decapacitate them so they don't want to throw another punch, because they start thinking every time I throw a punch, he's just blocking it, and not only is he blocking it, it's actually hurting me to attempt to strike him. So I can understand it from that point of view, but I don't tend to use that very often. I do much more redirect and counter, or even send signals and just get there first, pick off. That's something I'm working a lot on at the moment, pick-offs. Trying to get in there first, trying to read an opponent and so on and so forth. I don't really want to go on too much. I mean, I've got other things I would like to mention, particularly along the power generation line, but I think I'll keep it on topic for now on the Gedan Barai. So I'd like to get to hear your thoughts on what I've mentioned, and yeah, I'll leave it there for now. Take care.